The year was 2347. Humanity had changed so much in 300 years. They had left Earth and spread across the stars. They built cities on distant planets. They made homes on worlds that their ancestors could only dream about. Dozens of colonies existed now, each one connected to Earth by trade routes and communication lines that crossed the empty darkness of space. The Terran Coalition governed all of humanity. It was not a perfect government, but it was a fair one. People lived in peace. Wars between humans had ended long ago. There was no need for fighting when there was so much space for everyone. Children grew up knowing only safety. Old people died in their beds surrounded by family. It was a good time to be alive. Captain Daniel Harper had served in the Coalition fleet for 20 years. He was a calm man with steady hands and a mind that worked well under pressure. His ship was called the Endeavor, and it was one of the finest vessels in the fleet. Not the biggest, not the most powerful, but reliable. Daniel liked reliable things. He was stationed near the colony world of New Geneva when everything changed. The alert came at 3 in the morning, ship time. Daniel was asleep in his quarters when the emergency signal pulled him awake. He dressed quickly and made his way to the bridge. His crew was already there, their faces lit by the glow of screens showing something impossible. Ships had appeared in orbit around New Geneva, but these were not human ships. They were golden. They were massive. Each one was larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. They hung in space like monuments to some ancient power, their surfaces shimmering with light that the sensors could not explain. Lisa Monroe was the chief science officer on the Endeavor. She was young for her position, only 32, but she was brilliant. Her fingers moved across her console as she tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "I count 12 vessels," she reported. "Each one is approximately 15 kilometers in length. Their power readings are unlike anything in our database." Daniel stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the main screen. "Any response to our hails?" "Nothing yet, Captain," said Amy Collins from the communication station. Amy was the ship's linguist. She spoke 14 languages and could learn a new one in a matter of weeks. "Wait, something is coming through." The message played across every speaker on the ship. It played across every speaker on New Geneva. It played across every device capable of receiving a signal within range of those golden ships. The voice was deep and resonant. It spoke in perfect English, though Daniel suspected it was speaking in every human language at once. "We are the Valanthi. We are eternal. We are your gods. Kneel." The bridge was silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "Gods," Kevin Brooks muttered. Kevin was the head of security, a former Special Forces operative who had seen more combat than anyone else on the ship. He was not a man who scared easily, but even he looked unsettled. "They are calling themselves gods." On New Geneva, the situation was unfolding in ways that Daniel could only watch through long-range cameras. The golden ships descended through the atmosphere, moving slowly, deliberately. They wanted to be seen. They wanted to inspire awe. Pillars of light shot down from the vessels, touching the ground in the main plaza of the colony's capital city. And from those pillars stepped the Valanthi themselves. They were tall, 12 feet at least, maybe more. Their bodies were shaped like humans in some ways, but everything about them seemed more refined, more elegant. Their skin glowed with soft golden light. Their eyes burned with silver fire. They wore robes of white that moved even when there was no wind. The colonial governor was a woman named Patricia Owens. She was 60 years old and had spent her entire career in public service. She had dealt with natural disasters, economic crises, and political scandals. She had never dealt with anything like this. But she did not run. She walked out to meet them. The leader of the Valanthi called himself Zorath the Infinite. He looked down at Patricia Owens with an expression that might have been kindness on a human face, but on his face it looked like the patience of a parent dealing with a foolish child. "You are the leader of this world," Zorath said. It was not a question. I am, Patricia replied. Then you will be the first to kneel. Show your people the proper way to greet their gods. Patricia Owens looked up at the towering figure before her. She was small. She was old. She was standing in the shadow of a being that claimed to be divine. We bow to no one, she said simply. Zorath did not seem angry. He seemed amused. Every species says this at first. The Karathi said it. The Velmos said it. The children of 1,000 worlds have said those exact words, and they all learned. They always do. He raised one hand, and the sky above New Geneva changed. Clouds parted. Stars appeared, though it was the middle of the day. And among those stars, images formed. Images of other worlds, other peoples, all of them kneeling, all of them worshipping. We have existed for 10,000 of your years, Zorath continued. We have guided civilizations from birth to death. We have been worshipped by beings you cannot imagine, and we will be worshipped by you. Patricia did not look at the sky. She kept her eyes on Zorath. Then you have never met humans before, she said. For just a moment, something flickered in those silver eyes, something that was not quite certainty. Daniel watched the exchange from the Endeavor. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, he said quietly, and tell Admiral Grant that we have a problem. Lisa looked up from her console. Captain, I have been analyzing their ships. Their technology is advanced, yes, but it is not magic. Their power sources appear to be fusion-based, similar to our own designs, just bigger, much bigger. So they are not actually gods, Daniel said. They are very old. They are very powerful. But no, Captain, they are not gods. They are simply beings who have convinced others that they are. Kevin stood up from his station. Then they can be beaten. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, the question is how. The Valanthi gave humanity a deadline, 30 days to submit, 30 days to kneel, 30 days to accept their new gods or face what Zorath called divine judgment. The news traveled fast. Within hours, every human in the galaxy knew about the Valanthi. They saw the images of those golden ships. They heard the voice that called itself God. They watched Patricia Owens refuse to kneel. And then they waited to see what would happen next. On Earth, the Terran Coalition called an emergency session. Representatives from every colony world joined through holographic links. The chamber was full of worried faces and raised voices. Fear was spreading like a disease. Admiral Samuel Grant stood at the center of it all. He was an old soldier, 73 years old, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had fought in the last war between human factions, back when he was young. He had hoped to never see another war in his lifetime. That hope was dying now. The Valanthi have given us an ultimatum, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. The chamber fell silent. We have 30 days to submit to their rule or face what they call divine judgment. What does that mean exactly? Someone asked. We do not know, but we have received intelligence from other sources. It seems the Valanthi have done this before, many times. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed star maps, alien worlds, species that humans had never encountered. 17 civilizations, Grant continued. That is how many the Valanthi have conquered over the past 10,000 years. Some were primitive, some were advanced. It did not matter. They all fell. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Grant raised his hand for silence. None of them resisted successfully, but none of them were human. Amy Collins had been brought to Earth to share her findings. She had spent every waking moment since the Valanthi appeared studying their communications, learning everything she could about them and their conquered peoples. The pattern is always the same, she explained to the council. The Valanthi arrive, They demonstrate their power, they demand worship, and the target species surrenders every single time. Why? Asked one of the representatives. Why do they all give up? Because they believe. The Valanthi do not just use force, they use fear, they use awe. They make themselves seem inevitable, divine. By the time a species realizes they could fight back, they have already convinced themselves that fighting is pointless. But we know better, Grant said. We know they are not gods. That changes everything. While the politicians debated, Daniel Harper was doing something more direct. The Endeavor had been ordered to return to New Geneva, to make contact, to buy time, and to learn. The journey took 3 days. When they arrived, the golden ships were still there, hanging in orbit like patient predators. Daniel requested a meeting with Zorath. To his surprise, the request was granted. A shuttle carried Daniel to the Valanthi command ship. Kevin Brooks insisted on coming as security. Daniel did not argue. He was glad for the company. The inside of the ship was exactly what Daniel had expected. Everything was designed to impress, to intimidate. The corridors were wide and tall, made for beings much larger than humans. The walls glowed with soft light. The air smelled like flowers that did not exist on Earth. They were led to a chamber at the heart of the vessel. It was a throne room. That was the only word for it. And on the throne sat Zorath the Infinite. He was even more impressive up close. His golden skin seemed to pulse with inner light. His silver eyes tracked every movement Daniel made. A slight smile played on his lips. "The human captain," Zorath said. "I wondered if you would be brave enough to come." "Brave or foolish," Daniel replied. "I have been called both. Sit." Zorath gestured to a chair that materialized from the floor. It was human-sized, a small courtesy, or perhaps a reminder of how small humans were. Daniel sat. Kevin remained standing, his hand resting casually near his sidearm. The Valanthi guards watched him with something like curiosity. "You have come to negotiate," Zorath said. It was not a question. "I have come to understand." "Understand what? Why you do this? Why you need worship? Why you travel from world to world, demanding that others kneel?" Zorath's smile widened. "You think there is a reason? There is no reason. There is only truth. We are divine. We have always been divine. Worship is our natural right." "Rights are earned," Daniel said calmly, "not demanded." "You speak like a child who does not understand the order of things. Tell me, human, what do you know of the universe? Your species has existed for what? A few 100,000 years? We have watched stars die. We have seen galaxies collide. We were ancient when your ancestors were learning to walk upright. Age does not make you a god." "No?" Zorath leaned forward. "Then what does?" Daniel met those silver eyes without flinching. "I have read history. My people have worshipped many things over the centuries: the sun, the moon, animals, other humans. We invented thousands of gods. And do you know what they all had in common?" Zorath waited. "None of them had to tell us they were gods. We figured it out ourselves. Real divinity does not need to announce itself." For the first time since they arrived, the chamber was completely silent. Kevin felt a shift in the air. Something had changed. Zorath sat back on his throne. His smile was gone now. In its place was something harder, something colder. "You are interesting," he said finally. "Most species send their leaders to beg for mercy. You send a ship captain to argue philosophy. We do not beg. Not yet." Zorath waved his hand, and the chamber around them changed. The walls became transparent, showing the view outside. Stars, ships, and far below, the colony of New Geneva, tiny and fragile. "Your people on that world number 3 million, Zorath said. "I could end them all with a thought. I could turn that planet into ash and glass. Do you understand this? I understand that you could try. Try? A hint of anger crept into Zorath's voice. There is no trying. There is only doing. We have done it before. We will do it again if necessary. Daniel stood up. Then why have you not done it already? Why give us 30 days? Why give us any time at all? The question hung in the air, and Daniel saw something flicker in those silver eyes, something that looked almost like doubt. Because we are merciful, Zorath said, but the words sounded hollow. No, Daniel replied. You give us time because you want us to surrender willingly. You want our worship to be genuine. That is how you have done it for 10,000 years. You do not want slaves. You want believers. And you know that forced belief is worthless. He walked toward the exit. Kevin followed, his eyes never leaving the Volanthi guards. 30 days, Daniel said over his shoulder. You gave us 30 days to make a choice, but I think you are the ones who should be worried about what we choose. He left the chamber. Behind him, Zorath sat alone on his throne, staring at the door through which the human had departed. Interesting, he murmured to himself. Very interesting. On the shuttle back to the Endeavor, Kevin finally spoke. That was either the bravest thing I have ever seen or the stupidest. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Probably both. But I learned what I needed to know. Which is, they are scared. They will not admit it, not even to themselves. But somewhere deep inside, humanity did not spend its 30 days praying. It did not spend them negotiating. It did not spend them hoping that the problem would go away. Humanity spent those 30 days preparing for war. The decision was made within 48 hours of Daniel's return to Earth. The Terran coalition voted unanimously. There would be no surrender. There would be no kneeling. If the Volanthi wanted to be worshipped, they would have to earn it through force, and humanity would make that force very, very expensive. Admiral Grant took command of the war effort. He was not a young man, but fire had returned to his eyes. This was what he was made for. This was why he had spent his entire life in service. We have 28 days, he told his staff. In that time, we need to turn our entire civilization into a weapon. Every ship, every factory, every person who can hold a tool or pull a trigger. We do not have the luxury of time. We do not have the luxury of doubt. We only have the luxury of effort. Across human space, the message spread, and people responded. Megan Price was 35 years old. She was an engineer who specialized in weapons systems. Before the Volanthi arrived, she had been working on theoretical designs for next-generation ship armaments. Theoretical, not real. There had been no need for real weapons in peacetime. Now those theories were being built. She worked in the orbital shipyards above Mars. Teams of engineers labored around the clock, converting every vessel they could find into something that could fight. Cargo ships were fitted with armor. Transport vessels received gun mounts. Even civilian yachts were stripped down and rebuilt as fast attack craft. The Volanthi shields operate on a specific frequency, Megan explained to Admiral Grant during one of his inspection visits. We have analyzed the readings from their ships. Their defense systems are powerful, but they are not perfect. If we hit them with weapons tuned to disrupt that frequency, we can punch through. Can we build those weapons in time? Megan looked at the shipyard around her. Thousands of workers moved through the scaffolding, welding, wiring, testing. They had not slept in days. Neither had she. We will build them, she said simply. We do not have a choice. On Earth, Lisa Monroe made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying biological samples left behind by the Volanthi on New Geneva. Skin cells, hair, residue from their footprints, anything she could find. Her laboratory was filled with alien genetic material, each sample telling her more about what the Volanthi truly were. "They are mortal," she announced to the War Council. Her voice was steady despite her exhaustion. "They age slowly, but they age. Their cellular regeneration is impressive, but it is not unlimited. They can be wounded. They heal faster than we do, but they do heal, which means they can be hurt." "Can they be killed?" Kevin asked. He had returned to Earth with Daniel and been assigned to the Security Council. His job was to plan the ground assault portion of whatever battle was coming. "Yes. It would take significant damage, but yes, they are not immortal. They are simply very old and very resilient." "So, they bleed," Kevin said with grim satisfaction. "They bleed." The news spread through the fleet like lightning. The false gods could be killed. That changed everything. Fear began to transform into something else, something more useful: anger. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers across human space. Old soldiers came out of retirement. Young people who had never held a weapon in their lives demanded training. Factory workers extended their shifts. Scientists abandoned personal projects to join the war effort. Teachers brought their students to help in whatever small ways they could. Humanity was waking up, and it was furious. Meanwhile, the Volanthi watched. They had sensors on the edge of human space, monitoring everything. They saw the ships being built. They saw the weapons being manufactured. They heard the communications calling for resistance, and they laughed. "They are amusing," one of Zorath's advisors remarked. "Building their little toys. Do they truly believe they can harm us?" Zorath did not laugh. He stood at the window of his command ship, looking out at the stars. Something was bothering him, something he could not quite name. "The human captain," he said quietly. "The one who came to speak with me. What do you know of him?" "Daniel Harper, commander of the vessel Endeavor. His record shows no remarkable achievements. He is competent, but unremarkable." "He did not seem unremarkable to me." The advisor tilted his head. "You are concerned about one human?" "I am concerned about what that human represents. His species has only existed for a fraction of our lifespan. They have only been traveling among the stars for 300 years. They should be primitive. They should be terrified. But they are not. Fear comes later. You know this. Defiance is the first stage. It always breaks." Zorath said nothing. He continued to stare at the stars. On the Endeavor, Daniel was overseeing his crew's preparations. The ship had been upgraded with new weapons, new shields, new systems that Megan's teams had developed in record time. It was not the same ship it had been a month ago. Neither was its captain. Amy Collins approached him on the bridge. She had been working on something special. A message, a final communication to be broadcast to the Volanthi before the battle began. "It is ready," she said. "Do you want to review it?" Daniel shook his head. "I trust you." "What does it say?" "The truth. That we know what they are. That we are not afraid. That we will fight. And that they have made a terrible mistake coming here." "Good." Daniel looked at the view screen, at the stars that had always represented hope and possibility to humanity. "When do we send it?" "Tomorrow. At dawn, Earth time." 29 days, Daniel murmured. "We have done a lot in 29 days. "Humans are stubborn," Amy said with a slight smile. "We do not know when to quit. That is not stubbornness. That is strength." Daniel stood up and addressed the entire bridge crew. "Tomorrow, we tell the Volanthi what they are dealing with. The day after that, we show them. I will not lie to you. This will be hard. Some of us may not survive. But I believe in this crew, I believe in this fleet, and I believe in humanity." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "They called themselves gods. They demanded our worship. They expected us to bow. But we are human. We do not bow. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. And tomorrow, the entire galaxy is going to learn what that means." The bridge erupted in cheers. The next morning, as the sun rose over Earth, the message was broadcast. Every Valanthi ship received it. Every Valanthi soldier heard it. And on his throne aboard the command vessel, Zorath the Infinite listened to the words of Daniel Harper. You wanted gods to worship. You came to the wrong species. We have spent our entire. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. 300 human vessels dropped out of hyperspace near New Geneva. They emerged in perfect formation, spreading across the void like a wall of steel and fire. At their center flew the Endeavor, leading the charge against the impossible. The Valanthi fleet waited for them. 50 golden ships, each one the size of a small moon. They hung in space like monuments to power, their surfaces gleaming with ancient light. The mathematics were simple. The humans were outmatched in size, in firepower, in everything that should have mattered. But mathematics do not fight wars. People do. Admiral Grant's voice came through every ship in the fleet. All vessels, this is the moment. Everything we have worked for comes down to the next few hours. Remember what they want from us. Remember what they think we are. And then show them how wrong they can be. The Valanthi fired first. Golden beams of energy lanced across space, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a city. They had used these weapons against 17 other species. Those species had died screaming, their ships turned to vapor in microseconds. The beams struck the human formation, and the ships held. Aboard the Endeavor, Lisa Monroe watched her screens in disbelief. The new shields were working. Megan's frequency disruption technology was absorbing the energy, spreading it across the hull, bleeding it away into space. The ships were damaged, they were hurt, but they were not destroyed. All vessels return fire, Daniel commanded. 300 ships opened up at once. The weapons Megan had designed were not elegant. They were not refined. They were brutal, ugly things built for one purpose only, to kill gods. Missiles, railguns. Energy weapons tuned to rip through Valanthi shields like paper. The first volley struck the nearest golden ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks appeared in its golden hull. Light leaked from the wounds. Atmosphere began to vent into the void. The impossible had happened. A Valanthi ship was bleeding. Aboard his command vessel, Zorath watched in shock. "That cannot be," he whispered. "Our shields are perfect. Our armor is unbreakable." "It is broken now," his advisor said, his voice trembling. "My lord, we must retreat. We must regroup." "No!" Zorath's hands gripped the arms of his throne. "We are gods. We do not run from mortals." "Then we will die like mortals," the advisor said. Zorath struck him down with a wave of golden light. The advisor crumpled to the floor, unconscious or dead. It did not matter. "All ships, attack," Zorath commanded. "Destroy them! Destroy them all!" The battle became chaos. Ships twisted and turned through space, golden vessels and human cruisers dancing a deadly waltz. Explosions lit the darkness like new stars being born. The silence of space was filled with the thunder of weapons that could crack planets. Kevin Brooks led the boarding teams. His Marines had trained for this moment, running simulation after simulation, learning to fight in zero gravity, learning to kill beings twice their size. Now it was real. Their dropship attached to the hull of a crippled Valanthi cruiser. Cutting torches burned through the golden metal. The first Marines through the breach found exactly what they expected. The Valanthi were waiting for them. But the aliens had never fought like this before. They had always been the ones doing the crushing. They had always been the ones inspiring terror. They did not know how to deal with humans who charged directly at them, screaming defiance, refusing to die. Kevin's team moved through the corridors with brutal efficiency. They worked in pairs, covering each other, targeting the joints and eyes of the Valanthi warriors. The aliens fell. One by one, they fell. "This is Brooks," Kevin reported. "First target secured. Moving to engineering." "Copy that," Daniel replied. "Good work. Keep pushing. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human marines boarded Volanthi vessels. Human weapons punched through Volanthi shields. Human determination overwhelmed Volanthi certainty. The Golden Fleet began to break apart. Some ships tried to flee. Human vessels pursued them, running them down, destroying them before they could escape. Others tried to surrender. For a moment, Daniel considered accepting. Then he remembered the 17 species, the billions of lives crushed under Volanthi rule, the millennia of false worship and stolen freedom. No quarter, he ordered. They gave none to others. They received none from us. The battle raged for 14 hours. Aboard the Volanthi command ship, Zorath watched his fleet die. Half his vessels were gone now, either destroyed or captured. The golden light that had always surrounded him seemed dimmer somehow. The certainty that had defined his existence for 10,000 years was crumbling. He had never experienced this. None of his kind had. They had always won. They had always been supreme. The universe had always bent to their will. Now it was breaking them. A human voice crackled over his communications system. It was Amy Collins, broadcasting from the Endeavor. "Zorath the Infinite," she said. "Your fleet is falling. Your soldiers are dying. Your godhood is proving to be nothing but a lie. Do you understand now? Do you see what you truly are?" "I am a god," Zorath snarled, but his voice shook. "You are neither. You are simply old. And today you learn that age does not equal power. It does not equal wisdom. It does not equal divinity. You are mortal beings who have spent 10,000 years bullying weaker species. That ends today. You cannot defeat us. You are nothing. You are insects. Insects who are burning your ships. Insects who are killing your warriors. Insects who are ending your empire." Amy's voice was calm, almost gentle. "History has a name for beings like you, beings who demand worship but cannot earn it, beings who claim power but cannot keep it. We call them tyrants, and we have been destroying tyrants since before your species learned to walk." The communication ended. Zorath sat alone on his throne, surrounded by the dying light of his failing ship. His guards were gone, either dead or fled. His advisors had abandoned him. He was alone. For the first time in his impossibly long life, he felt something he had forgotten existed: fear. The final assault came an hour later. The Endeavor led a strike force directly at the command vessel. Megan's weapons tore through the shields. Kevin's Marines breached the hull, and Daniel himself walked through the corridors of the dying ship, stepping over the bodies of fallen aliens. He found Zorath in the throne room. The ancient being still sat on his throne, but the golden light was almost gone now. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, mortal. "So," Zorath said quietly, "you have come to kill me." "No," Daniel replied. "I have come to give you a choice, something you never gave your victims." "What choice can there be?" "Surrender. You and whatever remains of your fleet. And then you will answer for what you have done." Zorath laughed. It was a broken sound, hollow and sad. "You think your justice means anything? You think your morality applies to beings like us?" "I think morality applies to everyone. That is the difference between us. You believe that power placed you above consequences. We believe that power increases responsibility." Daniel stepped closer. 10,000 years, 17 species, billions of lives. That is what you must answer for. Not to gods, to the people you crushed. Zorath looked at the human standing before him, small, fragile, short-lived, absolutely unbroken. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. It traveled through communication relays and trade routes. It passed from ship to ship, world to world, species to species. Within days, every corner of known space had heard the same incredible story. The Valanthi had been defeated. The false gods had fallen, and they had been beaten by a species that no one had ever heard of before: humanity. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for weeks. People danced in the streets, strangers embraced each other, children were lifted onto shoulders to see the parades of returning soldiers. It was the greatest victory in human history, and every person alive understood what it meant. They were not alone in the universe. They never had been. But now they knew that being alone would have been easier. The galaxy was dangerous. It was full of beings who wanted to conquer, to control, to enslave. And humanity had proven that it could face those beings and win. But victory came with responsibilities. Zorath the Infinite stood in chains before the Terran Coalition Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from every human colony. Cameras broadcast the proceedings to billions of viewers. This was not just a trial. This was a message. Admiral Grant read the charges. Zorath, leader of the Valanthi, you stand accused of crimes against sentient life, the subjugation of 17 species, the destruction of countless civilizations, the enslavement of billions of beings across 10,000 years. How do you answer these charges? Zorath looked around the chamber. His golden glow was gone now. Without his power, without his fleet, he was just a tall being in chains, old, tired, defeated. I answer that we did what we were, he said quietly. We were gods. Gods do not answer to mortals. You were never gods, Lisa Monroe replied from her seat on the council. You were simply the first ones to figure out how to travel between stars. You found younger species and you crushed them before they could grow strong enough to challenge you. That is not divinity. That is cowardice. We brought order to the chaos, Zorath insisted. We gave meaning to civilizations that had none. You stole their freedom, Kevin Brooks said. You took away their right to choose their own destiny. That is not order. That is tyranny. The debate continued for hours. Zorath defended himself with the logic of 10,000 years. He spoke of stability, of purpose, of the necessity of strong leadership. He truly believed that what he had done was right. But humanity did not agree. Daniel Harper was the last to speak. He stood before the council, looking not at the audience but directly at Zorath. You asked me once what makes a god, he said. I told you that real divinity does not need to announce itself. I was right. But I did not give you the full answer. He stepped closer to the chained alien. A true god would lift up those beneath them. A true god would teach, not dominate. A true god would create, not destroy. You did none of these things. You found beings who were weaker than you, and instead of helping them grow, you kept them small. You kept them afraid. You kept them worshiping you because that was easier than earning their respect. Daniel's voice grew harder. That is not godhood. That is not even leadership. It is parasitism. You fed on the faith of others because you had nothing of your own. And now that faith is gone. Now you have nothing left. Zorath said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The council voted. The sentence was exile. Zorath and the surviving Valanthi would be given ships and supplies. They would leave human space and never return. But before they left, they would be taken to every world they had conquered. They would stand before the species they had enslaved. They would watch as those chains were broken. And then they would carry that memory with them into the darkness between galaxies. The months that followed were busy ones for humanity. Messages arrived from across the galaxy. The species that had been conquered by the Valanthi sent communications tentatively at first, then with growing boldness. They wanted to know about the humans. They wanted to understand how the impossible had happened. Lisa Monroe was put in charge of first contact protocols. She spent her days talking with alien ambassadors, learning their languages, understanding their cultures. Each species was different, but they all shared one thing in common. They were grateful. "You gave us something we had forgotten existed," one ambassador told her. His species was called the Karathi. They had been under Valanthi rule for 3,000 years. "You gave us hope. We did not do it for you," Lisa replied honestly. "We did it because we refused to kneel, but we are glad it helped others." "That is what makes you different," the ambassador said. "You did not fight for glory. You did not fight for power. You fought because you believed it was right. That is true strength." Amy Collins drafted the official response that would be sent to all the liberated worlds. She worked on it for weeks, editing and revising, trying to find the perfect words to explain what humanity stood for. In the end, the message was simple. The Valanthi made one critical error. They assumed that power meant divinity. They assumed that age meant wisdom. They assumed that fear meant worship. They had never encountered a species that looked at gods and saw only obstacles to overcome. Humanity does not kneel. We never have. We never will. Throughout our history, we have challenged every authority that tried to control us. We have overthrown kings. We have toppled empires. We have killed our own gods when they demanded too much. This is not because we are violent. It is because we believe in something more important than power. We believe in freedom. We believe that every being has the right to choose their own path. We believe that no one, no matter how old or how strong, has the right to take that choice away. The Valanthi are gone now. They will not return. But their lesson remains. Power is not permanent. Tyranny is not inevitable. And any being that demands worship will learn the same lesson they learned at New Geneva. We do not bow to gods. We become them. The message spread across the stars. It was translated into 1,000 languages. It was taught in schools on 100 worlds. It became the foundation of a new galactic order, one based not on worship, but on respect. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Valanthi heard it. They had been traveling for months now, their golden ships carrying them away from everything they had known. Behind them lay the ruins of their empire. Before them lay only uncertainty. Zorath stood at the window of his vessel, looking back at the distant glow of the galaxy they had once ruled. He was old, he was tired, he was diminished, but he was still alive, and that meant he could still think. "We underestimated them," he said quietly to himself. "We saw their short lives and assumed they were weak. We saw their small bodies and assumed they were fragile. We saw their young civilization and assumed they could be broken." He turned away from the window. "We were wrong. Their short lives made them urgent. Their small bodies made them resourceful. Their young civilization made them hungry. They did not have 10,000 years to grow comfortable. They did not have time to become soft. Every generation had to fight for its place in the universe." He sat down heavily. Perhaps that is the answer. Perhaps gods should not be worshipped. Perhaps they should be challenged. Perhaps divinity is not something you are born with, but something you earn through struggle. He looked at his golden hands, now dimmed and ordinary. Or perhaps there are no gods at all. Perhaps there are only beings with power, and the question is what they choose to do with it. He did not know the answer. He probably never would. But somewhere behind him, in the galaxy he had left behind, humanity was building something new. Not an empire, not a religion, just a future where beings could choose their own paths. It was enough. The stars continued to turn. New stories began. And the species called humanity kept doing what it had always done, looking up at the darkness and refusing to be afraid. "Very well," the ancient beings said. "I surrender." The battle was over. Human ships moved through the wreckage, rescuing survivors, securing prisoners, counting the cost of victory. They had lost 63 vessels, thousands of lives. The price of freedom was always paid in blood. But they had won. Against all odds, against all expectation, against beings who had been conquering the galaxy for 10,000 years, humanity had won. And the universe would never be the same. History killing our gods. We have overthrown kings. We have toppled empires. We have challenged every authority that ever tried to control us, and we have won. Every single time. Tomorrow, we will teach you what humanity does to false idols. Tomorrow, you will learn why the universe should fear us. And tomorrow, your 10,000 years of dominion will come to an end. The message ended. Zorath sat in silence for a long moment. Then he gave an order that his species had never given before. Prepare for battle. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Valanthi were uncertain, and uncertainty was the first step toward defeat. The storm was gathering, and it was about to break. They are afraid of what might happen if someone actually fights back. He looked out the viewport at the golden ships. They have never lost. They do not know how to lose, and we are going to teach them. The Endeavor jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it a message for Earth Command, a message that would change everything. The Valanthi were not gods. They were not invincible. They were simply beings who had never been challenged. And humanity was very good at challenging things. 30 days. Daniel looked around at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their faces. But they were also determined. They were human. And humans had a long history of refusing to do what they were told. 30 days, he said aloud. That is a lot of time. Let us see what we can do with it. The Endeavor turned away from New Geneva and set course for Earth. Behind them, the golden ships hung in orbit, waiting, patient, eternal. They had done this many times before. They knew how this story ended. Every species resisted at first. Every species fell eventually. But they had never met humanity, and humanity had no intention of falling.